I was born and raised in Rwanda. I became a priest there, a Catholic priest, and I worked there for 6 years. And when the genocide happened, I was in the country. I was still a seminarian, but after I finished my studies and became a priest, I tried to work as I could in the country, mainly about reconciliation. But after 5 years, I was very, very tired. I had to go outside the country as a refugee in France. Still now I live in France. And in meanwhile, I tried to do many things, to do studies in philosophy, in law, and in 2013, we tried to launch a political party. Even if I was a priest, I asked to my bishop to let me some time to be free and do something useful. So I wanted really to be in politics in order to try to help as I can. So since that time, I tried something very special, and that thing was to go back to Rwanda to become a presidential candidate. In 2017, I tried, but I was prevented from taking a connection flight in Nairobi, near Rwanda. So I was stopped there. I was pushed to go back to France. And in last elections last year, I tried again with a very huge team now at that time, but we were refused to go back to our country. So what I'm going to tell today is a point of view of an opponent, opposition leader, but it is not only our ideas. I will give you some numbers, because they asked me to talk about 30 years of the RPF. RPF is the political party of our president, Paul Kagame. And I have two parts in my speech. The first one is a kind of a balance sheet of this regime. And then if I have time, I will try to highlight the 5 axis that we use in our organization, in our political organization, the government in exile, the Rwandan government in exile, to try to do something useful for that people. So about this 30 years, or about this balance sheet, if I can call it that, like that, I will point out 13 key points only that I can comment to show what happened really and what the situation is now in Rwanda. So the first key point is that the better measurement that I found was a socio-economic and political situation or balance. And then I will begin by the first one, what is really, you heard many things about Rwanda. The success story of Paul Kagame and his RPF is known everywhere. But we have another side that it is not talking about, and that is what I would like to say tonight. The first point is about the socio-economic balance, which is very disastrous. For more than 30 years now, the socio-economic and the political situation, as well as human rights in Rwanda, have been in a catastrophic state. The country is led by a dictator. Paul Kagame is a dictator. You can understand when I tried twice to go and become a candidate with him, and that he refused me to land in my country, I don't find another word to say who Paul Kagame is, a dictator. So General Paul Kagame, who is personally responsible for organizing many killings in our country, during, even after the Rwandan genocide, even before, because we had to face a war very bloody war for 4 years, and he was the commander-in-chief. Instead of policy of reconciliation, his regime has elected the violation of human rights into a system of government. His regime instrumentalizes the genocide in negotiations with donors to endorse all of his crimes, many crimes. Where he has specialized in predation of natural resources from the neighboring country, the Democratic Republic of Congo. Now you know what is happening now. Many people are being killed in Congo because Rwanda supporting a movement named M23. They are killing many people. And I would like to ask you just some second, to remember and to honor the thousands of victims in Congo who are being killed by our country, our army, the Rwandan army. Just 10 seconds. Thank you. I find that our regime, Paul Kagame's regime, have been dishonest towards its international partners, because the Rwandan government spread lies that are cleverly orchestrated and relayed by international media that make Rwanda appear as one of the best governed and safest countries, with Kigali, the capital, as a showcase. Kigali the Clean, you may know, maybe you know that. Kigali the Clean, where ordinary Rwandans seeking to earn a living are excluded, particularly through street trading activities. The second key point is, the second one is something that is known on the other side about economic data. For us, there were many manipulation of economic data. In opinion of several researchers and informed observers, the Rwandan miracle, what they said about the Rwandan miracle, symbolized by the showcase that it is the capital Kigali, is nothing but a mirage. The state propaganda relayed by the mainstream media, non-governmental organizations, and donors who benefit from it just as much, in no way reflect the life of real society on social, economic, and cultural levels. The successes claimed by the government propaganda in terms of human development, mainly the complete coverage in health insurance, electricity, and water, are based on manipulation of statistics, denounced by several researchers and international institutions. The falsification of statistics aim to hide a disturbing reality of a highly unequal rent economy, incapable of creating an environment conducive and inclusive growth, reducing poverty, creating jobs for young people, and ensuring food security for the population. Several experts claim that the Rwandan government tends to inflate the growth rates achieved in the gross domestic product, GDP, to considerably reduce the real rates of poverty or inflation, or even to hide serious food crisis during severe droughts, in order to smooth its image with donors, mainly the United States, the United Kingdom, and the European Union, whose regime in power benefits from total and very active protection. There is a notable contradiction between the figures published by the Rwandan National Statistics Office on the growth of the population's standard of living, the real GDP per capita of around 773 at the market exchange rate, and the low purchasing power of Rwandans. Contradiction, of course. Yeah. The official statistics presented by the Rwandan authorities no longer have any credibility, so much so that some international experts no longer give them any credit. Based on various statistics, a Belgian international expert concluded that extreme poverty had increased by 6 percentage points between 2010 and 2014, from 94.9% to almost 51%, where the authorities announced a significant drop to 39.1% despite the drawout. A former World Bank expert testified in an article that the Rwandan authorities had decided to destroy all the information collected on site during a major study on poverty, following pressure from regime and before any analysis of the data was carried out. These data manipulations tarnish the assessments of progress made. Here is the third key point. It is a disturbing reality. And that disturbing reality is that Rwanda economic miracle is really a mirage. Rwanda's development is weighed down by the low level of education and human capital, economic and financial repression, poor management of public finances, persistent conflicts with neighbors, a private sector largely dependent on public authorities, an upward and worrying debt trajectory that has gone from 18% of GDP in 2008 to 73.5% in 2023. Understand? This is very important to know. The narrowness of the domestic market and extreme weather events. Furthermore, the Rwandan economy is subject to strong land pressure, of course. It is the most densely populated country in continental Africa with more than 500 inhabitants per square kilometers. The population has doubled in 30 years from 7 million in 1995 to 14 million in 2024. 35 years after the RPF invasion war of October 1990 and the Rwandan genocide of 1994, several contrasts still mark this country completely gauged in terms of freedoms and fundamental rights, and whose wealth is concentrated in the hands of a small minority around President Paul Kagame, who established a kind of apartheid system. A large majority of the population complains of being left behind by the so-called Rwandan miracle. The vast majority of Rwandans suffer in silence from the socio-economic record assessment of the RPF over the past 30 years, and note year after year a deterioration in their economic situation. That is the reality that people are living on the ground. 30 years of RPF's repressive regime have pushed inequalities and unprecedented hates in Rwanda. They have led to a deterioration in the standard of living of the population and a marginalization of the rural population, the urban poor, the vulnerable, and an increase in death related to disappear. The fourth point of key point is that Rwanda is still the poorest country on the continent despite massive aid, international aid. More than 62% on the rural population lives on less than 0.44 US dollars per day, compared to a proportion of 50.3% in 1990 before the RPF invasion war, a situation which is explained by a slowdown in the growth of the household consumption, especially in rural areas deprived of their means of production, mainly their ancestral lands, and replaced in their initiative to undertake agricultural activities. According to data provided by the World Bank, Rwanda is one of the poorest countries on the continent with a GDP per capita of only 773 at market exchange rate, a level lower than that of many sub-Saharan African countries poor in natural resources. Number 6, it is an economy depending on external aid. For the last 30 years, the Rwandan government has benefited from massive financial support from the international community of nearly 50% of the national budget, despite its massacres of population and other human rights violations in Rwanda and in the region, particularly in DRC. In 2023, the Rwandan economy remains very dependent on public development aid, which represents 8.3% of GDP, according to the World Bank. During this period, the country received substantial aid of 1.3 billion, one of the highest per capita in the region, meaning 98 per capita compared to 48 per capita for the Democratic Republic of Congo. The international aid is monopolized by the ruling clique, which returns a large part of it to tax havens and the West to finance propaganda, the personality cult of President Kagame himself, and to finance billionaires sport clubs. I don't know if you know that Rwanda finance millionaires West sport clubs. Number 7 is non-inclusive growth. Yes. The average growth of official national production of 8% over the period 1995 to 2024 was not inclusive. The main objective of Vision 2020 to be classified among middle-income countries in 2020 has not been achieved and remains far away in 2024. I'm sorry. The objective of eradicating poverty is far from being achieved. The majority of Rwandans have no purchasing power. They are simply trying to survive. Despite strong growth shown by national statistics in recent years, this prosperity does not translate into an improvement in the standard of living of the population due to insufficient job creation and low productivity linked to gaps in infrastructure, innovation, and resource allocation. In 2022, the unemployment rate stood at 24.3%, according to data from the National Institute of Statistics of Rwanda. Number 8. the country's wealth in the hand of the President Kagame and his close associates. This is very, very serious point. The Rwandan economy has become a rent economy subjected to the predation by the family clan of President Paul Kagame and his organization, the RPF. The president and his inner circle are engaged in the plundering of state property, the misappropriation of international aid, aiding to eat the profits from the privatization of public companies. Politicians, military personnel, businessmen linked to his group display a luxurious lifestyle, invest in Rwanda and in several African countries such as Central Africa Republic, Zimbabwe, and Congo Brazzaville, and others, in operations bringing considerable profits, such as the construction of villas to rent to international institutions, while exporting the bulk of their profits abroad in tax havens and in billionaires sport clubs such as Arsenal, Paris Saint-Germain, Bayern Munich, and Formula One. President Kagame and his political organization, the RPF, exercise control over almost all of the national wealth through the omnipresent holding company of the single ruling party, Crystal Venture, a monopoly in all sectors of the country, which owns all national resources and which grabs all public contracts. The proud presence of this holding stifles any form of competition, often by violent means, and prevents the private sector from expanding and experiencing real growth. In recent years, the Crystal Ventures conglomerate has begun to invest in countries where Kagame has deployed his army, particularly in Mozambique and in the Central African Republic, in the diamond and graphite mining sectors, in fruit juice, in factories, and in the security services. Number 9, one of the most unique economy in the world. This is not enough said. The growth of the Rwandan economy is deeply unequal and operates to the detriment of the poorest urban dwellers and the rural dwellers who are still largely marginalized. In 2000, the richest 20% held 51.6% of GDP, while the poorest 20% subsisted on 5.4%. The unprecedented inequalities between clean and prosperous Kigali, which is forbidden to the poor and vulnerable, and the rural regions and some cities which are more marginalized, contribute to the maintaining a tense social climate and undermine the country's economic development. The consequences are disastrous. Nearly a third of the population suffers from food deficiencies, and in some regions, this proportion had reached 40%. According to the United Nations Development Program, if inequalities had remained at the 1990 level with a growth of 5.8%, the income of the poorest 20% would have more than doubled. These inequalities and the very violent repression that Rwandans face are accompanied by higher rates of depression, anxiety, and other mental health problems. According to the World Happiness Report, Rwanda ranks second to last in Africa, meaning 38th out of 39 countries, and it comes in 143rd in the world out of 146 countries. According to the World Bank, the share of the Rwandan population living below the poverty line is around 40, a figure that has been stable since 2014. Many of the poorest in Kigali do not feel welcome in this city that has become a showcase in Africa and for the world, held for the safety and cleanliness of its streets. Let's go to number 10. And it is another reality. What is a measurement that everyone can see without any effort? It is a galloping debt of out of control and budget deficit. Rwandan public finances show a significant budget deficit of 7.3% of GDP in 2023, after 7.6% of GDP in 2022, while the very heavy debt at 73.4% of GDP has become out of control, driven by the depreciation of the currency given its high external share, example 77% of total debt. This is one of the highest debt to GDP ratios in the region, which with a high risk of other indebtedness. The most worrying thing is that Rwanda is on an upward slope, while the country's debt represented only 18% of GDP in 2008. This meteoric rise in debt demonstrates the inability of Rwandan leaders to adequately manage public finances. Given this observation, one may wonder who benefits from this debt and the massive financial aid paid by donors who felt guilty about what happened during the 1994 genocide. The upward slope is there. Number 11, the currency in free fall, another measurement that everyone can see without effort. The Rwandan franc has experienced a continuous depreciation against the US dollar, going from 100 francs for $1 American dollar in 1990 to 1,367 Rwandan francs for $1 in 2024. You understand the situation. In recent years, the depreciation has accelerated in a worrying way. Among the possible causes of this acceleration in depreciation since 2021, analysts point the loss of access to DRC mineral resources, even if we have a very bloody war now for this, because the exploitation of these resources had largely fueled Rwanda's foreign exchange reserves, thus supporting the value of the currency. Furthermore, the geopolitical context played a significant role because the economic and commercial partnership between Rwanda and DRC declined, with negatively affected the stability of the Rwandan franc. Among the internal causes of this depreciation, we can mainly cite the soaring inflation and restrictive monetary policies. Finally, the fall in commodity prices on the world market, particularly minerals and coffee, led to a drop in export revenues and a decrease in foreign exchange inflows. thus creating strong pressure on the Rwandan currency. About Rwandan currency, yeah, you can see the numbers. The agriculture sector accounts for 60% of employment and 25% of GDP. It receives only 5% of the budget, half on what the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations recommends. Poverty, particularly in rural areas, persists with a GDP per capita of 773 at the market exchange rate and a Human Development Index of 0.54, below the average for sub-Saharan African countries, placing the country 171st out of 193 countries in the world. So, number 12, and we approach the end. Number 12 is the investment in health and education, because health spending is $10 American US dollars per capita, 3 times less than the average for developing countries, which is 34, and below that of sub-Saharan African countries, $12 US dollars. Due to poverty, 30% of children in rural Rwanda drop out of school before completing the 4th grade. The World Bank's Human Capital Index, which measures the level of human capital a child born today can attain by the age of 18, ranks Rwanda 166 out of 174 countries. Today, 37 of children under 5 suffer from chronic malnutrition. Yet in 1990, when Kagame attacked Rwanda, the country had achieved food self-sufficiency. And the last key point is exorbitant military spending. With Kagame, the army is the main thing. Military spending accounts for 13% of GDP. Even development aid granted to Rwanda is taken up to 10% to finance repressive agencies, double the share allocated to agriculture. This is what I can say about the situation. Please try to understand me. I seek the best for my country. But the situation is before us. You will not hear many people giving the numbers. I didn't create these numbers, but the numbers are not known really because they hide them. The government of Rwanda pays to hide the reality on the ground. As I'm a politician, with my team, we try to think about what is the best to do. So we think about 5 axes to do something. The first one is reconciliation, social cohesion, defense and security, because we have to restore peace and reconciliation and preventing conflicts inside our country if we want it to continue to exist. I can give details of this, but it is maybe not necessary today. The second axis is economic prosperity, of course. I was telling you about the situation nowadays. If we do nothing about reviving Rwanda's economy after 30 years of corruption and investment in rural infrastructure, will be a complex challenge, of course, that requires a multidimensional approach. Innovative strategies that we have to implement in order to build and revitalize the economy. I can say many things. We have really details of what we want to do in the country if we have a chance to become the president of Rwanda, because I'm working on it. Really, that is my desire. And my friends, we are really trying to achieve that. Third axis is education, health, and social protection. In the reconstruction of a wounded society like the Rwandan one, education and training play a crucial role. They are essential to restore peace, foster reconciliation, and prepare individuals to contribute to economic and social revitalization. Investing in education and vocational training is essential to prepare the workforce for new economic and technological challenges. We have a number of points that we are, and projects that we are going to develop. The fourth axis is the environment and sustainable development, and the last one is a honest, positive, and active diplomacy, because we have a real problem in our country. All the countries around us are our enemies, or we are the enemy of our neighbors, because all actions, all military attack go from our country, from Kagame's regime. So we have a problem with diplomacy. Nowadays, Congo is losing a lot of people killed by Rwanda. And you understand, if we do nothing, our country can be destroyed anytime. Congo is now being organized by a new leader, his president. His allies are trying to go to Congo and to be organized militarily in order to defend that country. And you understand, we think that they are able to do something and to destroy our country. Of course, we try to do our best to be in touch with them and to present ourselves as new leaders. I have a chance to meet the president of Congo, and it was very useful meeting with him, and he knows us now, and he tried to work with us as the next leadership of Rwanda. I thank you for this time that you gave to me. Thank you so much.